On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Ash Berlin Taylor. He is a PMC member of Airflow and Director of Airflow Engineering at Astronomer. Also, I have with me Kaxil Naik. He is a PMC member at Airflow as well and manager of Airflow team at Astronomer. This is going to be a little bit of a different episode. We're going to be talking about the upcoming release of Airflow 2.0. We're going to talk to both Ash and Kaxil about some of the enhancements, changes that are coming out with this new release, and I'm really excited to share this with you, and I'm really excited to have them on. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Sure. So to set the stage, obviously, I know I introduced both. You did not do justice to your backgrounds. So maybe, Ash, you can start off kind of introducing yourself, and Kashil, after that, kind of give us a little bit high level who you are.
So I'm not a data scientist. I'm not an engineer by background or training. I started many years ago as a Perl developer, of all things. Got bored of that, did kind of operations, and I try not to use DevOps as a title, but it's what people understand. Did that for a number of years, which is how I got into Airflow. Essentially, someone needed Airflow deploying. I was like, great, I can deploy software. And then one thing led to the other, and I started doing kind of pull requests and fixes, and then ended up working full-time on Airflow as a kind of, getting paid to work on open source. So ideal job for me. So been around the houses now, Perl dev and manager of developers.
Yeah, for me, it was an interesting journey, to be honest. I came to the UK to do my master's in data science and analytics. From there, got an internship in a company called Data Reply, which was a consultancy, big data consultancy. And I remember we were doing a project for one of the leading retailers in the UK, and we wanted to have an orchestrator. They wanted to migrate from their Hortonworks platform to GCP. And we were looking around, and Airflow sounded really nice tool. And one thing led to another. Like, we started working on Airflow, started discovering bugs. I remember my first PR was just fixing a typo in an operator, which was causing us headache. And that was my first PR to any open source project. And since then, I think contributed for a year or so before I became a PMC member.
Awesome. Sounds like you guys have a passion for this. Obviously, you breathe it, sleep it. I know I was excited to have you guys on because the upcoming release of Airflow 2, I know we're going to talk a lot about that on this podcast, is really significant. And I think there's a lot to unpack and kind of talk about some of the upgrade paths for people and talk about the community that's kind of been involved in getting you guys here. So let's talk about Airflow 2. What's going to be the big wow factor for people to kind of look forward to? And I guess maybe what's the one or two top things you guys are talking about?
The first thing people will notice is redesign the UI. Like, it's not a big thing. It's still functionally the same UI built using the same tech. We've just finally managed to get one of our kind of designer and front-end engineers some time to work on it. So they've kind of given it a lick of paint. It now looks like a UI out of, let's say, 2018 rather than 2015. So that's going to be the first thing people notice, which is the UI is just kind of, a lot of the jankiness has just gone. You get kind of like content rearranging itself and things as stuff loaded in. So that's sort of now all gone, and it just looks nicer. And then I think the other big thing they'll notice is the scheduler is now significantly faster. So kind of a big chunk of Kaxil and my work over the last 5 months now has been that kind of the scheduler HA and performance work. So any big change in Airflow, it goes to an AIP, an Airflow Improvement Proposal. So AIP 15 was, hey, let's rewrite the scheduler to make it. The stated goal was HA and performance. Most of the work actually was on performance rather than HA. But yes, in some workloads, we're seeing 10 to 100 times faster, which is kind of like, no, my benchmark is wrong. I don't believe that number. It's too quick. Let's rerun it and triple check that. And okay, yeah, no, we were just embarrassingly slow in some cases before. So that's kind of the other thing I think people notice is it is now much, much faster. I should kind of clarify what we mean by faster. Your individual tasks are still going to take as long as they took, but the scheduler will get out of the way and start your task quicker. So kind of, the ideal goal is one task finishes and 0 seconds later, the next task starts. Obviously, 0 is never possible, but we want to get that as close to possible. So yeah, now we're talking like 0.18 seconds is kind of I can say it to that level of accuracy because it seems to be that stable, whereas previously it was 5 or 10 seconds, or sometimes 5 minutes between tasks. So much, much faster.
Interesting. I guess when you're looking at, the AIP and you guys are, you mentioned trying to obliterate your benchmark, try to get it faster. Maybe take us a step back when you guys were originally sitting down to look at what should be in this release. How were you guys looking at the trade-offs of, you guys can only deliver so much in Airflow 2, but what were you kind of looking at as to kind of address some of this? Was it just performance? Was that really standing out in terms of, evaluating what should be undertaken for Airflow 2?
Airflow 2 originally came out with, the reason it's Airflow 2, not 1.10.11, was there are some backwards incompatibilities we wanted to remove, or wanted to break some things, some old things. Airflow is a project. It first started the code was first started in 2014, first release 2015. I think someone's going to correct me in the comments. I'm sure if that's wrong, but so it's kind of a relatively old code base. It's not, but it's been around for a while. So kind of lots of things now. It's like, this is not ideal anymore, so let's just change it. So kind of following semantic versioning 2.0, things aren't compatible anymore. Then we took a long kind of hard look and went, well, if we're going to have to break some things, let's give people a nice shiny carrot to upgrade to. So what can we get in that gives them a reason to upgrade rather than it's like, it's fine, we'll just stay on 110. And kind of one of the big things we're kind of conscious of is we don't want to leave our users behind. We don't want them to be stuck and just go like, it's not worth upgrading. So it's kind of, here's some things, we're going to break a few things. And hey, look, here's a really nice shiny carrot for you to upgrade.
Yeah, and I think along with that, we spent a lot of time scoping the features out, or because I think open source, saying no is a bit harder. And that's why we started organizing these dev calls, the community dev calls, and inviting everyone in the community to join those calls. Basically, we plan in that meeting what we want to include in 2.0, how we are basically track how we are doing towards 2.0. And first we started with bi-weekly meetings, then we moved to weekly meetings. The community has been engaged for it. And it's been a good last couple of months, I guess.
Sounds certainly exciting. And it seems like you guys have packed a lot in. And we'll go back and kind of talk about some of those features. But Kaxil, you mentioned the community. And obviously, having those calls with them to understand what they need and what their needs are and what they want as a part of Airflow 2. Talk a little bit about the community, the growth in the community, and kind of how you guys have seen that mature over the last couple of years.
Oh, community has been Airflow's biggest strength. Like right now, we have around 19,000 GitHub stars, 1,300 contributors, like unique contributors. We have Airflow workspace, a Slack workspace, and that has like 10,000 users. I remember we moved from Gitter to Slack 2 years back, I guess. And it's been amazing. And if you join the Slack workspace, the activity going there is also amazing. And what we do is every year, or at least from the last 2 or 3 years, we have been running the surveys in one form or the other to understand how people use Airflow, to understand what are their pain points. Also not last year, it feels like last year, but we concluded like Airflow Summit this year, which was a major success. And like people from all around the world attended it. Like we even got the support from all the local meetup groups in different countries. They helped us organize this Airflow Summit, which lasted 3 days, I guess. No, 2 weeks, if I'm not wrong.
It was 2 full weeks.
Yeah, 2 full weeks.
It was 2 full weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and the number of people attending, showing their interest, engaging with the contributors. And I think even in the Apache Software Foundation, Airflow is one of the most welcoming community. We have tried to reduce the barrier as small as possible, and people have responded to that, which is really amazing. Like even right now, when we try to fix bug, we first create GitHub issues, and even before I know it, someone has already asked, saying, okay, can I fix it? I want to take up this issue, which shows the strength of the community, which I think is really important for Airflow and has been important for Airflow from a long time.
That's amazing. I mean, it sounds like the passion behind the product is kind of helping you guys figure out some of these features that I guess we were talking about. And I know, Ash, you mentioned, some of the UI changes, the scheduler. And then off air, you mentioned about the full REST API as well, and how that's going to have a pretty big impact for the users.
Yeah. So Airflow's had an experimental REST API since I've been involved in the project. So that's, at least since 2017. And it's only had about 10 endpoints that kind of weren't very complete, and they had a few glaring no-nos, like a mutating GET request and things like that. So you kind of like, you'd send a GET request and it would change states, like, no, don't do that. Didn't have much love. It was kind of like what was there worked, but what was there was wildly incomplete. So when a fellow committer is now a PMC member, did a whole load of work to create an AIP to say, let's have a concrete, specified, extensive REST API. So there's a full open API schema, which means you can auto-generate lots of clients for kind of any language you want, which makes it all nice and easy to use. The goal is to let anything you can do via the UI or the CLI, you can do via the API. There may be a few batch or kind of bulk operations missing at the moment, but anything that operates on a single object, you can do right now. The kind of the long-term goal with the API is we are considering, we haven't decided if we're going to do that yet, we're considering rebuilding the UI in, let's say, something like React, and then using the API to drive it. So that will kind of flush out any missing endpoints. And also, kind of similarly, having anything you can do on the CLI should also be the API. So you could then also use the CLI to target a remote Airflow. Right now, the CLI basically kind of speaks to your database and speaks to the files and disk, but being able to point the Airflow CLI at a remote Airflow server would be cool. This kind of also lets kind of more power users have more control of what they do in the DAG. So you can have you can make more complex decisions. So if you want to kind of like collect the state for multiple different DAG runs, and you could write an advanced sensor to kind of do that, or you could kind of have one Airflow cluster look at another one to just kind of like make decisions that way, or to trigger a DAG somewhere else. So it just kind of gives you more tools in your toolbox for controlling Airflow how you want to control it.
Yeah, the API is also open API compliant, so people can generate their client in different languages. I remember one of the other committers have already created Go client already, or is working on it, which is really nice.
Yeah, so one of the committers has used the Open API spec to create a Go client, and then has wrapped that up in a Terraform provider. Not a complete provider, it only did the few things he wanted, but yes, he had a Terraform provider to control Airflow to do a few specific tasks. So that was kind of cool.
And this is still just off the beta, like the excitement around leveraging the API in beta is just run and go ahead and start building off that already.
Yeah, some of this work was actually done before it was even kind of alpha, when we were still just talking about, hey, let's release 2.0. So yeah, it's kind of July, August kind of time frame.
Yeah.
Wow.
Time kind of blurs. This year of all years, kind of, global situation. Plus, I was off for paternity leave for 6 weeks for my wife had twins. So it's kind of been all hands on deck this year for me.
That sounds like you've had a very packed year in terms of having to deal with the pandemic and 2 newborn twins. I appreciate your time. Then I know you guys are in London, so I know it's got to be hopefully a good quiet time for you now.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's asleep in the house, so it's one of the few quiet times I can actually think.
That's you. I like that. Talk to me about, you mentioned the REST API, right? And then you guys have done the UI. The one thing that we were talking about that I thought was really interesting is just the different types of users that use Airflow for their own particular uses. And I guess, you guys have picked different things, components within the product enhances. Was some of that in mind? Like, were you guys thinking we have a broad type of users and we want to help kind of address some of those, or did these features just happen to flesh out the way they did?
I think for most of the features, it flushed out, but we had it in our mind that we want to cater to more audience, because Airflow was created back in 2014 as just an ETL tool, but you don't always foresee what people will use your product for. And I think Airflow just schedules your task. It does not care about what you run with it. So it opens an endless possibilities, and people started using it for different things. Like, I remember the company I worked with previously used it for DevOps related work. They automated their Terraform and Ansible scripts via Airflow. Automation of automation, right? And then from last few years, when data science field has gained some hotness, many data scientists and machine learning use cases have been worked with Airflow. And I think we also want to cater to more data scientists and machine learning use cases with Airflow. So the scheduler HA improvements or scheduler performance improvement are going to help with that, with the task legs very, very small, because what data scientists want to do is run their algorithms quickly, iterate over it, find the best accuracy, and then productionize it. So I think that would help.
So I guess kind of like one of the things that we work on is, or we just kind of decided to focus on, is the bigger, tougher problems. Because it's not many people's job to work on Airflow. Their job is to do something with Airflow, and they, however much they might like to spend the entire time hacking on open source software, most people don't have that luxury and that privilege, and it is a privilege. So we kind of like, what are some of Airflow's problems right now, and what can we tackle? What do we have the kind of the time to tackle, because we can spend 4 months working on this that other people can't? So that's kind of where the performance improvements, the HA, the API, that kind of thing came in, which is, it takes kind of more concerted time than a drive-by contributor can do. So, like someone wants to add a new feature to one of the providers to speak to a new service, or, AWS launch or GCP launch a new service, kind of adding that in is relatively straightforward. It's kind of maybe a couple hours work, a bit more for testing, and then a little bit more to kind of get the PI merged and reviewed. So that's something someone can kind of do in their spare time or with a bit of downtime. But these bigger tasks are something that we felt uniquely placed to do. So we can like, what's the biggest bang for our buck? What can we spend our time on? And yeah, Scheduler HA was how we spent our time.
Sounds pretty significant as well. And I think, going back to maybe something you mentioned earlier, versioning, you mentioned, this is going from version 1.10 to an actual 2.0. Talk a little bit about that. So if you have a current instance of Airflow, you're the latest current, available release, or 1.10, what does Airflow 2.0 that's going to come out of beta at some point mean to them?
So originally when we said we're going to release 2.0, we were going to use it as I said we're going to use it for a chance to kind of break backwards compatibility, and like, it's a 7.0 version, these things are breaking. That's true in some cases, but we have put a lot of effort into the upgrade path. So either making the backporting the features to 1.10 so that users can make that change now and then upgrade, or putting in a kind of a backwards compatibility in 2.0 so that it will work in 2.0 but issue a warning. Kind of for our users, the recommended upgrade path will be to install the latest version of the 1.10 release series, which will be 1.10.14 in a couple of days. In that, there is a command called Airflow space upgrade check. So upgrade _ check. If you run that, it will kind of look at your configs, look at your DAGs, and go, here are some actions you need to take to be able to reliably upgrade to 2.0. That said, I'm a pragmatist, and I realize that people are going to ignore that and not do it. So we've also put a lot of time into where we can to having the old style of code continue to work and just kind of scream at you a bit saying you need to update your code, it's going away in 2.1. So we're not following strict Semver. We're probably going to follow something closer to Django Semver, which is, if it's deprecated, we can remove it in the next bump release afterwards, that rather than waiting to 3.0 to delete it. We haven't decided exactly what we'll do on that, but yeah, we've also put a lot of testing into the database upgrade path, as well as kind of like code changes the users have to make. Some people like to see 3 or 4 or 5 years of task history and be able to go back and browse it. So we put a lot of testing into making sure that you can apply all the database schema migrations seamlessly from 1.10x to 2.0, and that it doesn't take hours to run and things like that. So hopefully we've done a lot of hard work so that you can kind of run this upgrade check script, get it to the state where it says no warnings, no errors, and then upgrade to 2.0 when it's finally out.
Yeah.
Which should be.
And I think one of the things we also did was separate out the providers from the core Airflow package. I think before few releases, we had like just Airflow, all the operators and hooks inside either Airflow core or inside the Airflow contrib directory. So Airflow operators or Airflow contrib operators or Airflow contrib hooks. But from Airflow 2.0, we are separating all the providers, because you could have an operator that runs a Salesforce job, or you can have a BigQuery operator that runs a BigQuery query. We just separated it out and made it so that Airflow code is as thin as possible, and also so that Airflow, all the providers are released separately, and users can install just a specific provider and say, if there is a bug they find, they can just report it and we can patch that up and release a new version of that provider. So they don't need to worry about that. So it also makes the release process easy for us and for users. And to make the upgrade part easy, like you were asking, we also released backport providers. Like users can already start using those great providers in their Air 110X versions. We call them Airflow, Apache Airflow backport, then Google or Amazon, and they can already get the newest operators from Airflow Master. So they don't need to wait for a new Airflow version to come out before they can start using new features for a particular hook or operator.
It sounds like 114 will be out pretty soon, and 2.0. It sounds not too far off. But if I was looking at a net new instance, I might as well just jump into Airflow 2 beta and just take advantage of all these nice features. Seems pretty impressive in terms of the new offering that you guys have put together.
Yeah, the normal kind of release process for an Airflow release is kind of the release manager, which is so far has been the 110 series has been myself or Kaxil. We'll kind of prepare a release, we'll spend some time backporting things, and then there'll be a 3 or 5 day testing window. 2.0, we've done a little bit differently. I think the first alpha was released October, something like that. Essentially, we've had like 6 to 8 weeks of testing process. So that, because like this is a big release, months of changes. So yeah, we kind of wanted to give as many people as possible the chance to test it and find bugs. So yeah, the releases are getting kind of more and more stable. And I know people are already running 2.0 beta 3 in production. I don't officially recommend it because it's beta software and it might eat your data. It won't, but I have to kind of give you the caveat: it's beta software. Expect beta quality. Don't be upset if you get beta quality outcomes. I haven't seen it. No one's reported it. And I would be surprised if it happens, but caveat installer.
That's also the strength of the community, though, that whenever the alphas, betas, or RCs come out, a lot of users from the community help in testing those and report back any kind of issues, either on Slack or GitHub issues. So even before we think about that, there are already issues and sometimes already patches available for it.
Absolutely. You guys are still waiting for this release, and something makes me feel that you guys are probably thinking about the next, I don't know if major release, but the next update and what you guys will probably start looking forward to including.
I have a list longer than both my arms of things I would like to build. Where to start? There's all sorts of things I would like to do. So one that we've kind of kicked around a bit is DAG versioning. So if you change the structure of your DAG over time, right now the UI doesn't display that very well. So that's kind of one we've been looking at about how we would do that. Dynamic DAGs. So to kind of give a sort of traditional ETL example, let's say you're processing a data set from a supplier, and every week they give you a set of files in your S3 bucket. You don't know how many it's going to be. Somewhere it's between 10 and 1,000 files. It's kind of random each month, depending on how much activities there's been. Traditionally, if you want to kind of process that in any kind of efficient way, you probably say use BigQuery or Spark, and then it would handle the fan out. Maybe that isn't necessary anymore, and maybe Airflow could handle that fan out for you, because Airflow's traditionally kind of done a lot of sent its processing off elsewhere, but there is also plenty of valid use cases where you just want to do it in Airflow. So it's just kind of, you write Python, you can kind of run a function and just do it there. So some kind of fan out, create the right number of tasks that run in parallel and then kind of collect the result together. That's another one. Data awareness. So Airflow, its kind of reason for being is processing data. It can do many things, but that's kind of its core thing. That's all the providers. Most of the providers are around like data processing tools and frameworks and stuff. So again, this example of suppliers delivering your data set, it would be nice if there was some way to annotate some data, have a little bit of metadata, and say, this week I processed 123,000 records, and then next week I processed 124, and then you just get a nice little graph of how many rows. Like what this is doesn't kind of matter, but it's just some way of a task returning metadata. Kind of prime example of that, and just kind of making Airflow a little bit more data aware without actually getting too much into what your data is. So it's kind of opt-in data awareness. Real-time UI, we fixed some of it, but not having to refresh to see your DAGs kind of change state and kind of things like that, just so it kind of live updating and server push events because it's 2020 and it's kind of table stakes at this point. So let's get it there. That won't happen this year. So clearly it's going to be 2021 at the earliest.
Yeah, removing time as an important factor from like task instances and diagram. I think right now you cannot run the same diagram with the same execution date and the same ID again. We want to change that. And I think that was his idea as well, Ash's idea as well, that users should be allowed to run it multiple times. And I think many users have been asking as well. So that is the next.
Kind of prime example there would be like machine learning program, or if you want to do kind of A/B testing where you want to run two different algorithms against the same data. That's kind of like right now, kind of execution date or date is a kind of a special variable, special axis in Airflow. And we kind of want to make it less special so that you can do things like that, split testing and all that kind of stuff where run it again for the same date, different inputs, that kind of thing.
How much of, I guess, the experience now of moving, getting this version 2 done, how much of, will you guys take a different approach for the next release? Or are you just kind of, you guys are happy with how you guys, the process now, and you just carry it forward? What are your thoughts?
The next releases won't be as big. And somehow we ended up as a project in a slightly weird situation where the 110, it's a release branch. So kind of whenever we create a new release stream, so 110, 19, 18, each one gets a different branch and kind of forks off master when it starts. And then somehow we just kept releasing point releases to Airflow 110 because no one was quite ready to step up and say, we've got enough for Airflow 2.0. So there was kind of quite a lot of divergence in the Git history. If you look at it, it's some kind of horrific number of commits different between master and 110. That number is amplified because we cherry-picked a lot of those back. But kind of once we get to 2 hours, a chance to kind of reset and tidy up our release process and kind of bring it back under control so that we have to do less work for each release in future. Particularly also with the providers split out, things get easier. So we're hopefully going to go to kind of 2 or 3 monthly release cadence, that kind of thing. So there'll be a 2.1, then a 2.2, and then 2.3, and probably a 2.4 all next year with just some more features ticking along as and when we get them written.
Yeah, at least for last 1 year or two, we have been good at releasing frequently with few months of cadence, but we want to get better at releasing major releases too at frequent intervals, not so frequent, but frequent enough that the branches don't diverge like what happened to 110 and 2.0.
Awesome, guys. It sounds really exciting. I think it sounds like both of you are very proud, almost beaming parents. I'm seeing you guys on video, but I can see the smiles on your face. It seems like a lot of, not just your time, the community, everything is kind of culminating in this major release. And again, I know you mentioned when you're expecting it to be coming out of the beta. What's the timeline again that you think?
So we're hoping for a 2.0 release candidate the week of the 7th of December. So sometime release candidate that way. And then the kind of the Apache release process will kind of vote on it and test it and validate a few things about that. So before Christmas, certainly, hopefully, kind of 2.0 available the week of the 14th of December, 2020.
Hopefully, it would be a good Christmas gift.
Hopefully, you guys will be able to celebrate with a nice, tall, cold beverage of your choice and kind of celebrate and enjoy all the hard work that you guys put into this.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I'm going to sleep.
There you go.
Yeah, I think we have had long debugging sessions with scheduler stuff and with lots of different things. So I think Christmas would be amazing. Once 2.0 comes out and people start adopting it, that would be just amazing to see.
There you go. Nice release for both of you, it seems like, just to kind of get it out there and take a little bit of a mini break, it sounds, because obviously you guys will be back at it on the next set of features you guys have to get out. I think it's been fantastic having you guys share what is a very impressive Airflow 2 product coming out. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. And then we'll include links to everything that everyone should have out. If we'll make sure we get all the necessary URLs. So we'll have it all in the show notes so people can kind of follow kind of some of the stuff that we've been mentioning. And hopefully everyone can kind of take advantage of the new product. If anybody has any questions, we'll kind of redirect those to you guys and kind of let that take its course.
For sure.
Sounds great.
Awesome. All right. That's it for this episode, guys. Thanks for being on. And as always, thanks for everyone having y'all listen in on this episode. two things I always ask for. One is keep coming up with the ideas. I'm, love the fact that I'm getting suggestions and topics of what you guys want to hear. I think that's crucial for providing more value back to the community. And continue subscribing. The growth has been amazing so far, and I can't thank you enough for continuing listening. Until next time, thanks.